Good afternoon, Mike Winkler here. I wanted to take a minute and do something a little different than what we've done in a lot of these videos. I want to take a step back and talk about the core value of QRadar itself, right? What we're doing with security intelligence and what it brings to someone that's using it. I'm going to show, a couple of my designer slides here, but then I want to go into the interface and I want to talk about the actual way we do the forensics and the digging in and all of that good stuff. Okay, fair enough. So we start out with, right? QRadar, center of IBM security, and if you've looked around, you might have seen some of these slides before, but it starts out with log events, right? And the idea of log events is I can pull in either the dumb logs from something that says Mike went at 6:02 a.m. and hit this website and this protocol, okay, great, but as well as a lot of smart events, right? The decisions from other devices, like a Blue Coat or a FireEye that have already made good analytical decisions, and we wrap that into our security intelligence model. There is NetFlows, our old friend NetFlow. What I get from the flow is a lot of information about connections between devices that you don't get from log events, okay? So what NetFlow does is it allows you to stitch together a lot of the smart stuff here to say that I saw someone log into a crypto vault, and okay, that's great. And then I start to see them build connections to some external sites that isn't so great. So it allows us to make the connective tissue of the intelligence here, right? We can live without them, but we're a lot better with them. X-Force and Watson, and I'm going to talk quite a bit about X-Force when I get going here in a minute, when I get the interface up, that it is of so much value to have a real-time kind of flow analysis. That is to say, where are the malware engines this week? Who's sending out the crypto attacks this week? What are the where's the malware? Where's the viruses coming from and all of that? And it's updated as much as every 6 minutes, although not usually quite that often, so that when we get all of these events from the inside, all these flows from the inside, we correlate it with what's on the outside, right? So that you're getting a full value of not just your environment, but IBM helps you get an appraisal of what's going on in the world. Watson's good stuff, but it's a little out of the focus of today's discussion. Vulnerability data. Vulnerability data is so terribly useful and not terribly difficult to integrate to help us build this threat model. And I'll show you this off in just a sec. And SOC orchestration, right? All the big dashboards, all the cool things to look at. So this has always been the core of our strategy, of our philosophy, but I want to take a minute, present this to you before I went and actually walked into the interface so you can kind of see the plan of what we're trying to accomplish. Okay, so this is the QRadar dashboard, right? Something, if you've used the property, you've seen quite a bit. And it's kind of a funny thing to look at this point. It is our old school dashboard. It's still valuable, gives you a nice appraisal of what's going on, but it is kind of the oldest way to look at the product, and I think the oldest existing screen we still have. Still good stuff, but I'll show you kind of as we go along here how some things have changed since this was kind of the center of our universe. Okay, the offense screen is where we're coming from and where we're going to. In QRadar, what we do is I will take any number of events, right? Any number of flows. By events, I mean logs, both the smart ones and the dumb ones. The security intelligence model combines them and it generates an offense. Something I cannot say loudly enough or crow about often enough is the security intelligence is built into QRadar. This is nothing you need to build rules for. This is something that out of the box is smart. It's a story I like to tell that the very first time I built one of these, I was standing in South Texas. I got a senior engineer standing behind me just waiting for me to make a mistake. I hook up the QRadar and I get some log data hitting it, and before I can update it, before I can write a rule, any of these things, that I get an offense. And it's because the guy who was working in their lab, in their test net, had put an illicit VPN over to his desktop so he could get to his email while he was working in the test net, or works all the way around segmentation, right? Generated an offense on the board. I didn't write this. QRadar is smart as you get it, right? You get it out of the box. It knows all these correlations. And as you see, some of these are a couple of thousand events or hundreds of flows. I have seen 250,000 events create a single offense. And they're intelligently put together. That is to say, they're combined so that you're never scraping logs and you don't need to know what you're looking for. So some of my competitors out there in the world, they like to talk about they can search for anything. If you can search it, you can find it. If you don't know what you're looking for, that's hard. And that's kind of the big center of the value prop here at QRadar. But I'm going to go away from the screen for just a minute and we will come back to it, I promise. This is old school log activity, right? You cannot live your life without log activity. And I'm going to take just the last hour here, and I'm going to grab this. I'm going to look at it by low-level categories, right? And you'll notice that it was working on it, and I don't need to wait for the prior screen to finish up to go to the next screen, because it's got something oddly named lazy search. So this is the view of the last hour of everything in terms of low-level categories. And I've got some things that are just, oh, good, this login's going on, and I'll get some geography to text, and I'll talk about user behavioral in a minute in detail, and some things here that are just fine and some things that are a problem, right? I can see person-to-person software in progress, maybe a problem, maybe not. I can see, let's see, malicious software, suspicious patterns, all of this. So these are the log events. And unlike some of the competitors I have and some other folks out in the world, you have full value all the way down of all of these forever. So I'm going to just try and find a fun one here to look at. And let's go after malicious software. Source IP is obscured, but we do know the destination, right? Not a shocker that a malware is going to obscure its source. You'll see a number of filters at the top I've set just kind of to get out the junk events that we don't care about for this kind of analysis work. But in this case, I will see malware or virus clean failed. Well, that kind of be a problem. It's single events. They're coming from an unknown source, but I do know the destination and I do know the username. Okay, fair enough. But I want to drill in. I want to look at one of these a little bit closer. Okay, so you will notice there's a magnitude bar here with relevance, severity, and credibility, which make up magnitude. Relevance, how much it matters in this environment. Severity, how severe it is if it actually happens. Credibility, how much I believe the source. 5 is kind of our median. If it's a 10, this is something we know is a real deal here. Okay, typically means manual intervention will be needed to remove the malware. Okay, fair enough. So I can tell you that the destination is this machine here, which is at my facility in Anchorage. And I can look this up like we can look up, and we'll see in just a minute in the asset table. I can find out what's going on with this particular user. And I can tell you that a malware failed to be cleaned, needs to be removed manually from that guy. Okay, by itself, this doesn't mean much, right? So Mr. Kane, Mr. T. Kane, Tommy Kane, has got a virus on his machine. The destination is, Comp Shitkus. And we can tell who in here is what's going on. This is just a log event. Anything will give you the log events. But this was the point about the offense screen earlier, is it ties these together with patterns so that you have something more meaningful than sending the help desk guy out there to clean a virus. And we can look at any number of these things, right? Some of which are no big deal, some of which are just fine, some of which would be a really serious problem. I'm going to look at this potential SMB vulnerability. Okay, and this shows one of a McAfee box on the perimeter is detecting a null pointer deference, which I don't even know what that is, but we can look up. I have source and destinations, places where they're the same and places where they're different, port 139, which is interesting, a box communicating back at itself. And I can say relevance 1, or this is a pretty little thing, severity 5, if it would have got through, credibility 5, so this sounds like something that was blocked, right? So I can tell you this came across the inner shield, and that it was blocked. And so this was a case of something trying to reach a vulnerability and it being stopped by the inner shield. Nice work, McAfee gear. Okay, cool. So this is roughly how the log events work. They all have a relevance, a severity, a credibility. They make up a magnitude, and it's one of the big things that makes up offenses. I'm going to tap over to my network activity here. Okay, and I'm going to take the last 45 minutes of this, and this is net flows. And I got a couple of ways that I like to look at this, one of which is by application. So I can say, what is actually going on in my environment, right? What am I seeing traffic from? I have gone into environments where they are very together and very locked down. And we found things in net flows that they were surprised that we found. In this case, what we're looking at is a bunch of secure web traffic, which I don't care about in this particular case, so I'm going to remove that from my graph. Okay, and that's so then I'm looking at the other things going on here. I have some P2P BitTorrent, actually quite a bit of it going on here, and that can kind of be a problem. And a lot of activity here that it's likely to be fine, but some of it might be violations of network policy. Things like the Jabber chat client, right? Maybe that's okay in your environment, maybe it's not. But at the moment, I'm going to go look at this BitTorrent. And I can look at these IP addresses, same with flows that I can with events, same with offenses, that I get that fun little pop-up that shows me where in the world they are, in this case Jamaica. But more importantly, I can go through and I can do a lookup to see if this is a good guy. So I'm going to go into my plugin options, and I'm going to do an X-Force Exchange lookup. And this is going to show me on an easy scale from 1 to 10 whether this is a suspicious host. In this case, this guy is a nice guy. He has, at current, nothing that is considered suspicious. I can look in the past and say there's been a bunch of dynamic IPs, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. This is very likely with that name to be an ISP. And it shows me that any bad activity or any BitTorrent activity coming from this guy is very likely a local user, right? Just someone on their home cable modem or some such. But let's drill into this a bit. And we'll see here that that 72 dot address that we just investigated is having a bunch of communications inside my environment with a local resource in the 10 dot network, some of which I have a capture of. I've got the full packet headers for because I'm using a Qflow listener. But going to drill into one of these guys. We're going to see relevance of 1, severity of 8, credibility of 5, or it's really not a big deal because it's P2P software, but it might be a problem, right? So very small yellow followed by a big red. A lot of custom fields don't apply to this particular thing. The source, the destination, and we see it is indeed a BitTorrent keep alive signal. So there's some stuff going on with this, but there's not a lot of data. And maybe you'd want to make some changes with this, or maybe you wouldn't. But it tells you what's going on, who it's going on with. If there's a username, we'll give it to you. With NetFlow, really often there isn't, though. Okay, cool. So that's events, and that's flows. And let's tap back and look at offenses and think about what we're trying to actually accomplish here. So I'm going to look at this offense down here, number 256. Okay, what's going on in this alludes to what I was talking about in the beginning. I saw an X-Force pulse, right? So X-Force identified that the IP address at 69.172.216.56 was a bad actor, right? Potential malware host, preceded by an internal connection to a possible host. That is to say, my guy at 192.168.2.112 had already reached out to him, containing secure web traffic, or this is very likely a problem, right? So I see my host is communicating outbound with a known malware server. And I could go through and do a lookup of this guy the same way we did in Flows a few minutes ago. I can tell you in this case, there's no logged in user, or it's an unknown logged in user. I could drill into these events and flows, just like we showed on the other screen, right? But I'm not going to do for time's purposes here. And I can tell you that it's a botnet connection. We can drill into that. And these are the rules that are broken. Okay, so I can tell you in this case, those 3 items together are going to spot something that maybe your antivirus would, maybe it wouldn't, maybe it won't spot for 2 weeks. But this is very, very likely a data exfiltration attack going on. And if I had this in front of me running an environment, I would either be blocking that at the firewall, sending a guy hotfoot out to that desktop, or both. When we talk about user behavioral analytics, people are very intent on that kind of UBA screen, which we're going to get to at the end, but that's really not the core of it, because QRadar is all about offenses. In this case, and this has been flagged by another user, I have user behavioral analytics has flagged an offense. It's crossed a risk threshold. In this case, it is my truly scary root user that's crossed a risk threshold. 775 events together have created something that is an aberrant appearing thing for this user. Okay, in this case, there's a whole big pile of events that's gone up slightly while we've been talking. And I'm going to scroll down to the logic for this one. And it's telling me Unix accessed at unusual times, accessed with a service account, and same account being used for multiple locations. This is really likely going to be a compromised root account. And if the last one was something that would make me run to change a firewall rule, this is something that would make me jump up and call everybody in my team to say, I have a compromised root account. Or at the very, very best, you have a root user who's behaving really bizarrely. And I can tell you that they're communicating out to a site in Romania. And is this a good guy in Romania? Is this someone who's a problem? I'm going to look this one up. And okay, this guy in Romania is not a malware site, or at least not in recent history, because he's all clear. But this is still some really troubling activity that we wouldn't have noticed if it wasn't for collecting the user behavioral data and accumulating it in the SIM model. I want to take a look at one more offense before we delve into some of the later sections of it here. This particular one I've also flagged, suspicious host, chained, preceded by potentially successful exploit containing authcrypt. And if you look at my screen here, you'll see a bunch of authcrypt going on, and that can be a problem. So in this case, 99 events, exploit followed by suspicious host activity, preceded by potentially successful exploit containing auth crypt. So we have spotted data that is indicative of a specific bit of malware. The asset name, I have a long form DNS address, which is what we get sometimes. I have Mr. Leopold, I believe Leon Leopold in this case, talking to an IP address of 199 in Lincoln, Nebraska. So, okay, fair enough. And it's a real question, right? So this is someone that we're seeing miscellaneous exploit activity. It's come in across two different of my checkpoint servers, right? The one at .59 and the one at .60. And some of this is correlation from the rules, and we're seeing worm activity followed by host activity. So this is a compromised host. And we could tell you this not because of any single event, but because of what the events meant together. Okay. One of the things folks ask me almost right away when we get to this point is, what if an offense is wrong? What if that is a user that behaves that way? What if this is a server that's just badly set up? Well, the answer is you can tune a rule. And tuning a rule in QRadar is quite a bit different than what you're going to see elsewhere. And these are the rules that it's violated. Exploits followed by firewall except, chained exploits followed by suspicious events. But let's say this particular firewall event is okay when this guy does it. And I'm going to copy and paste an address here so I have it later. This is the rules wizard. Any of you that have used Outlook, it looks an awful lot like that. So I'm going to take this section in the middle and I'm going to say, apply when, and this is the name of it, when events are detected on a local system, although we might say global, and when a subset of at least one of these defined category or building block in the order in which destination IP is followed by a subset of at least one of another defined category from the same source IP within 10 minutes. Well, that makes sense. But what if I want to say it's okay when this particular guy does it? So I'm going to click my plus sign up here. And so it adds the line. So I'm going to change this to and not from a following IP address. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to paste an IP address and tell it that's okay. Okay, and this is all it takes to edit a rule. I can go forward and edit some other stuff that we're not going to get into right now, but that's all that's involved in changing it. There's no scripting, there's no regular expressions, none of that. It's bang done. Okay, I'm going to cancel out of here. We talked about the offenses. I want to talk a minute about assets. So QRadar builds you this asset table. I used to work for a vulnerability management company years ago, and they're like, hey, you can build an asset table. And I don't think I ever met anyone that actually built one that put the time and effort into it. So this is where we've correlated the vulnerabilities, and this is good stuff. It's also where I'm getting data on who the last logged in users on a machine is. So I'm going to pick on my poor jump server, which seems to have a lot of vulnerabilities here. We know the name of the machine, we know the IP address, and it does a good job of recognizing them as unique assets, even machines with more than one MAC and with lots of IP addresses. I want to open up our friend the jump server here. So we can see the IP address and what things we've managed to ascertain from watching the packets go by. No logged in user, which is interesting, right? It'll generally show if a user's been logged in recently for it. But here's the interesting part, is I have all the vulnerabilities as attached. And this is scaled as they come from the vulnerability scanner. I believe this one is a Qualys. So that if I have something coming across a proxy server or internally that's going to blow up this particular memory object handling vulnerability, it is going to create an offense and put it at the top of my chart that's all red that says, hey, I have something that is vulnerable and is being exploited right now. Okay, that's kind of a big deal. So kind of circling back a little bit, what an offense means is I have a combination of flows, events, external communication with X-Force, and internal communication with your vulnerability database, so that when I tell you something's going on with the flows, with the events, with the logs, all of this, that it is a combination, it comes to you in real time, right? That's what QRadar does. It is security intelligence. I mean, my kid's sister can do log management. Anyone can do log management, but this brings it all together in one place. Okay, I want to talk about a couple of the newer things then. Because one of the things you can guarantee is the bad guys aren't standing still, so us good guys can't stand still either. I'm going to show you off a couple of new graphics. This is the Pulse graphics package, right? It shows that I generated a bunch of offenses up to show you guys some fun things earlier. It shows the categories that are most commonly hit, all of these good things. And it's the new way that we can look at these things. Our old dashboard will always be there for you. But if you want to go through and you want to look at these in some kind of more modern ways, I've got the graphics here that'll come up and show them to you, and you just tune these however you feel like tuning these, whatever is going to work best for you. You should never have events or flows being quite as flat as mine are with demo data, but I think it gives you a good idea of what we can do with this, right? So it's whatever you really want to do. And there's lots and lots of apps. This is the App Store in QRadar, right? So, and these are I believe there's 154 currently shipping. Some are made by my team, that is to say IBM. Some are developed by third parties like Amazon, like Anomaly. Either way, they are QA'd by IBM so that they are good code, so that they will not, they're not malware, and that they actually have a legitimate security function. And we can tab through and find lots of these, right? Or I can go through and I can search for them. So if I wanted that Palo Alto dashboard, just click on that, and this creates all these new dashboards, all these new look and feels for QRadar. In this case, I could create this dashboard the same way we have UBA created. And this is what the Palo guys think would be the most valuable to you. Okay, tapping back here for a minute, I want to go over to the UBA User Analytics screen. And one of the points I made earlier is offenses are the center of everything we do. But you can also get some fun value out of this User Analytics screen. And I can tell you that there's offenses to my root user in about an hour ago, 6 days ago, and then some other folks earlier than that. And I've put some folks on a watch list, right? My root user is slightly better, greatly better, 2,000 less offense points than he had earlier. And Catherine Hodo is also quite a bit better. So this shows the number of things that people do on kind of a sliding point system, or before when something goes from being suspicious to when something goes to becoming an offense. And let's crack one open here, and let's look at user with the high. We're looking at our hand. And we will see that Mr. Hand here has a certain number of suspicious activity. This is our learning graphic, right? But it gives you modeling of what the expected behavior of a user is. And I can tell you that this guy's a web designer in my New York office. And he was much riskier yesterday, or in the last couple of days, than he is before. So, but he's had some geography changes, role changes, suspicious. Now, this is someone I would definitely take a look at, right? To say, user geography changes 66, user role changes. Geography changes 66 means one of two things. Either it's my demo data I've intentionally randomized, or you have someone with compromised credentials that are being used in other parts of the world. In this case, I'm going to say that this guy has logged in, I'm not even sure what country that is, in Japan, in the United States, some logins that are together, some that are different, and we can drill into these and look at them just like we can in QRadar, or look at them in QRadar native. So I can say, man, that my guy here is almost definitely penetrated when you look at those timestamps. Suspicious, privilege, rarely used, all that good stuff. So I can dig in and I can look at, oh good, we've locked this guy's account out, and we should. So I can go through and I can look at the actual user behavior, what's going on with these individual people. And we can drill in and we can look at the ones that are important and all that, but don't get so hung up on the dashboard here. What this is users by rights, users by access, and users by time that I build a point system that I inform offenses with, so we can tell if users are violating normal behavior and good behavior. Right? So this is here, and this is a cool dashboard, but it's just part of the offense cycle. Last thing I want to show you is QDI. QDI is deployment intelligence, QRadar deployment intelligence. And it just shows you what's going on, right? Status of my hosts, who's logged in, top searches, top processes, all this good stuff. Some of these are blank because I don't have a lot actually going on right now. It's just demo land. But this is really useful when you're trying to figure out why your QRadar isn't running as well as you kind of hoped it would, or kind of like it should. It just gives you a lot of data to work with. So that when we're looking what a QRadar does, okay, and I'm trying to give you as many good possible uses of it as we can. These are apps I think you might want to use. These are apps that there's updates for since I started doing this. And this is all of your support, your links, and all of this good stuff. So this is QRadar, this is security intelligence, and this is what we do. Thank you. This has been Mike Winkler.